Welcome everyone to The Deep Dive. Today we're really going deep, exploring the philosophy of science, specifically in Latin America.
Yeah, that's right. It's a rich area full of really unique perspectives.
We got this, fascinating collection of research here. Historical analyses, some real deep philosophical works, even publications straight from research institutions all across Latin America.
A real treasure trove.
Absolutely. And our mission, if you will, is to pull out those golden nuggets, see how scientific thought evolved differently in Latin America, understand their unique contributions to the philosophy of science. It's a journey, folks. Buckle up.
It is. Often, the story of science gets told from a European or North American point of view.
Right, very limited.
This deep dive, it's a chance to see things differently. A perspective rooted in a whole different set of historical and cultural experiences.
So let's set the stage first. Way back, colonial period, right?
Oh.
Our sources show scholastic philosophy was dominant.
Brought over from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, shaping intellectual life for centuries.
Right, so for those listening, this means a system of thought that was really grounded in logic, reason, but all within a framework of religious belief.
And it's this system that's in place when these nations start fighting for independence.
And then, boom, the Enlightenment hits.
Yeah.
Seeds of change everywhere.
A shift towards reason, observation, individual liberty. It's in the air.
And then in the 19th century, Latin America gets swept up in this wave of positivism.
Huge. You see thinkers like Angel Flora Costa down in Uruguay really championing this new way of thinking.
Yeah, and for our listeners, this is key. Positivism. It's a big departure from scholasticism. We're moving from a system rooted in theological reasoning to one that says, look, what can we observe? What can we measure? That's what's real. It changes how they approach science fundamentally.
Absolutely. It takes root in Argentina, big time. Think Florentino Ameghino, University of Buenos Aires, doing groundbreaking work. You see it in Mexico, Brazil too, influencing big institutions like the Escuela de Recife, even the military academy. Positivism was really in the air.
But it wasn't unchallenged. Right. I mean, as we move into the 20th century, you start seeing pushback. Thinkers saying, hey, wait a minute. Maybe just focusing on the material world, just on what we can observe, is leaving something out.
Exactly. Like down in Peru, you have Alejandro Octavio de Ostua leading this spiritualist movement.
Right. A big name. So for our listeners, what was he saying? How was his spiritualism different from this, very materialist positivism that had been so dominant?
Well, he's really emphasizing the importance of inner experience, this spiritual dimension that positivism kind of pushes aside. He's saying, look, if you want to understand reality, the whole picture, you got to go beyond just the stuff you can see and touch.
Interesting. So a more holistic view, you could say.
Exactly. And up in Brazil, you have another really interesting development. Einstein visits in 1925, and it kind of sparks this anti-positivist movement.
Really? Einstein? Wow. Okay, so what happens?
Thinkers like Otto de Alencar and Amoroso Costa, they start questioning these purely mechanistic views of the universe that positivism had put forward. They're grappling with Einstein's relativity, the complexities of space and time.
They're pushing the boundaries of scientific thought.
Definitely. And what's fascinating is that these reactions against positivism, they take different forms across the region. In Brazil, you have neo-Atomism emerging, drawing on the ideas of thinkers like Bergson.
A more, I guess you could say, a more spiritual, intuitive approach.
Yes, definitely. And then you have culturalism with Miguel Real as a leading figure, really focused on understanding Brazilian culture itself.
So a shift towards exploring their own unique identity.
Exactly. And this is really crucial to understand. The philosophy of science in Latin America, it wasn't just about importing European ideas. It was about responding to their own context. This pushback against positivism, it's a move towards finding more regionally relevant ways of understanding science and knowledge itself.
They're forging their own path.
Precisely. And that leads to some even more distinct perspectives later on. Really powerful movements like the philosophy of liberation and dependency theory emerge.
Right. Huge movements that had a global impact. So for those listening, can you break those down? How did they shape the philosophy of science in Latin America?
Dependency theory, for instance, it offered a really critical lens on how global power dynamics, the whole system, influences how science develops in what they called dependent nations. They argued that science itself can be shaped by economic and political inequalities.
So they're bringing in this social and political dimension. It's not just about science in a vacuum.
Right, and the philosophy of liberation, that's another powerful current. It really sought to develop philosophical perspectives rooted in the actual lived experiences of Latin Americans, including their relationship with science.
So it's not just abstract ideas, it's about how those ideas connect with the real day-to-day realities of people in Latin America.
Absolutely, and that really comes through in all these sources. This connection between science and society, it's a constant theme in Latin American thought.
Absolutely. There's this quest for a regional identity in science, a desire to create knowledge that speaks to the specific challenges and perspectives of Latin American societies, especially in light of their colonial history.
Right. And it's important to remember that this isn't just a historical thing. This engagement with the philosophy of science, it continues to shape how science is taught, how science policy is developed in Latin America today.
Still relevant. So to really get a sense of this landscape, we should mention some of the big names, the key thinkers who've shaped this field.
Absolutely.
We've got Mario Bunge, famous for his analytical approach to the philosophy of science. Leopoldo Zia, who really dug deep into Latin American identity. Thinkers like Oscar Miro Quesada and Carlos Octavio Bunge, who made significant contributions as well. And then in logic and epistemology, the study of knowledge itself, you've got figures like Thomas Morrow Simpson, Raul Orion, Luis Fioro, and Francisco Miro Quesada. Really influential thinkers.
A whole range of perspectives showing just how rich philosophical inquiry is in the region. They're addressing these fundamental questions about the nature of scientific knowledge while also grappling with the very particular challenges and contexts of Latin America. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. This ongoing dialogue, this wrestling with these big questions, it shows that the philosophy of science in Latin America, it's alive and well.
It is. And those questions about intellectual autonomy and the relationship between science and society, they're more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good place to leave our listeners today with a question to ponder.
Yeah, I like that.
So, given these unique historical and societal factors, how do you think a specifically Latin American perspective on science can enrich our global scientific understanding? How can it help us tackle the pressing challenges we're all facing? What does it mean for scientific development to be truly autonomous? We've given you a lot to think about. Go explore, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.